Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. The actor James Cromwell is quoted as saying, "Pets are humanizing. They remind us we have an obligation and a responsibility to preserve and nurture and care for all life." Well, my guest today knows that better than anyone. I'm delighted to be joined by Brenda Barnette, the GM of LA's Animal Services. So nice to have you here.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. All right. Well, last time we talked was sort of the beginning of the pandemic and what was happening with the shelters and the struggles. But actually, despite the struggles of the pandemic, the city of Los Angeles shelters reached a milestone this year by achieving a no-kill status in 2020. How did that happen?
Well, it was sort of magical, actually, and the city's not really going to call ourselves a no-kill city yet, because it was a different year, but we did achieve the 90.49 life save rate, which under normal circumstances would be considered no-kill. So we wanted to celebrate anyway all of the people who made that possible. I mean, everything from our national friends like Best Friends has been quite a champion. ASPCA has been wonderful. And then we've got New Hope Partners, rescues who pull animals, adopters, foster volunteers, nearly 3,000 volunteers that just help us.
Sure.
And then there are people in the streets who do things to help animals that never even meet our radar because they're just out there doing their thing and they're not part of the system. So it really has been a whole village effort, and there have been people here much longer than me who have been working on trying to achieve this, and we wanted to celebrate them this year.
All right, as strange as this question is, did the pandemic help? Because it seemed like absolutely everybody adopted a dog or a pet for comfort, company, and exercise, and our whole safer at home, and then can't do anything except maybe go hiking and walking around the neighborhood. Was there a huge influx of adoptions?
Well, there was a big influx of adoptions and people who wanted to foster pets. At one point, we actually ran out of foster pets, and we had to wait until some more came in before we could give them foster pets to take care of. So I think, but what I think is the most remarkable about it is the return rates. Our return rates for people, for dogs who were adopted or cats who were adopted during that time is lower than it's been in the past. So not only did they adopt them, they kept them. They fell in love with them, and probably, if I were to guess, I would say, okay, you're at home with them all day. I know where my dogs were all day. They were circled. I was, working mostly from Zoom and on the computer, and my dogs were always in the room with me, occasionally making a little appearance in a Zoom meeting, invited or not. But they were there with us. And so, it gave people time to let them adjust to their new surroundings and their new lifestyle, and they didn't bring them back. So it was a win-win for the animals, for sure.
What you said about the Zoom meeting made me think of a couple things. First of all, I think, obviously everyone has accepted that we are living in this norm where you're going to see everyone's lifestyle, their pets, their children, etc. But have you noticed that there's more acceptance of dogs in particular just in our daily lives? It's sitting next to us outside in restaurants, or definitely walking on paths. I mean, there seems to be more of a cooperative effort to live together.
Yeah, and that's a really good thing, because when animals are kept at home with just their family and then they take their first outing, everything is surprising to them. We take our dogs out to eat on a regular basis. They've learned.
What do they order?
Well, I was going to say well, we did have a birthday party where they got ice cream, but for one of them. But they know to stay on the sidewalk or to lay down beside the table or whatever. But I think it was around Halloween maybe. We were at a shopping center and we had done some outdoor dining, and then we were going to just walk the dogs around so they could see the people, because they don't get to see people just at our house. So there was a little girl in this bright yellow sort of skirt, and our dog looked at her and was like, oh, and tried to go the other direction.
Oh, wow.
So, but we continued to walk around until she got totally calm in that situation. So being able to take dogs out dining and to walk them, take them in, the lumber stores, I mean, I love to do that.
Right.
Then that gives them a chance to get socialized, because they haven't been during the pandemic, and for good reason.
I think the most surprising thing I saw, and this is anecdotal and I'll get to more serious questions, is, walking one of the paths I like to walk when I'm hiking, there's a lot of small animals you see in these strollers. And so I anticipated seeing a Pomeranian or, a Chihuahua or something like that, and this couple came walking toward me. 2 Persian cats.
Oh, wow.
Which I thought was a unique choice.
Yeah, that is. I don't think my cat would really like to go a lot of places, but
no.
I'll ask her when I get home.
Let me know what it says. So the no-kill rate at 90%, 90 point what?
49.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's obviously a leeway in that, in which there are circumstances in which an animal has to be put down. So what are those things that are the predominant reasons why an animal can't be?
It's a good question, and it's been a number of years since we have run out of space and had to euthanize anything for lack of space in the shelters, which is really wonderful. So now when you look at those that were euthanized, they were ones that were medically challenged, seriously medically challenged, like irrevocable suffering, so that they're really just keeping them alive might have been questionable, and the veterinarians would feel that it was more humane to go ahead and euthanize them. And then the others, when we have hearings about dangerous dogs, if a dog is declared dangerous, we're required to euthanize that animal. And all those numbers are included in our numbers, so we don't say, well, because it was a court order to euthanize, we take them out of our numbers. We don't do it that way. We just leave them in. And then there are other animals that come in that people turn them in because they've bitten a family member, or they've done something, or there's, they just feel like they can't handle them. We will offer those first to our rescue partners, because some of the rescue partners have trainers that work with them. They have experienced foster homes that will take a dog like that and work with it. It's not something we're really equipped to do in a shelter environment.
Sure.
So if we can't find someone who can take that dog and work with it, and if we think it's too dangerous to release to the public, we will humanely euthanize them.
I imagine, especially in a shelter environment, might exacerbate a scenario because the animals are in a confined space, etc. But you just made me think of something. When you have an animal, cat, dog, horse, bunny, whatever, brought to the shelter for adoption, how do you learn the temperament of the animal so that you can very comfortably say to whomever comes in, don't put this in a house with other animals, this animal is fine around children? I mean, what's the process of vetting a shelter animal so that you are feeling comfortable with an adoption?
Yeah, you're full of good questions.
Oh, good.
It is. Because, a lot of it has to do with the interview process if it's an owner surrender.
Sure.
So that we can get a lot of information. Some people might gild the lily a little bit and might not tell you everything you want to know, but our staff is pretty experienced in saying, well, what about if it's this way or that way, until they can get as much information as they can. And then some of it is by handling and just working with them while they're in the shelter, the staff and the volunteers. We're doing something in the shelters now that I think is really exciting. All of our staff and all of our volunteers are taking a fear-free shelter class. Now, that doesn't mean so the people won't be afraid. That's accepting the fact that when an animal comes into the shelter, they've never been there before. It sounds different, it looks different, it feels different. So the animals are likely going to be afraid in the beginning. So we try to do things just to calm them down and let them relax. And one of those is just, playing with them, giving them treats, welcoming them, giving them something to sleep on, so until they do settle down. And a lot of shelters don't really start examining dogs for temperament until they've been there for a while. And, been there 2 or 3 days, had a chance to relax, and then you can sort of see who that is. But, I'm very proud of our staff and our volunteers for taking this class, so they'll know how to welcome animals into the shelter, how to make them feel not fearful, and to feel like they're safe and they're okay. And we can't really tell them they're there temporarily, but if we get them out into a foster home or a home of their own quickly, then they're not set back by being sheltered for a long period of time.
Okay, myth or fact? I was told at one point in time that when an animal is surrendered and then adopted again, that it has an even stronger attachment to its adoptive family.
Yeah, that I could believe that, and it might depend on the particular dog, whether or not it's a dog's dog or a people dog. But I could see that, and I think I've heard that too, that they're just so grateful to be in a home and to be rescued, and that they make amazing pets. The other thing about getting one that's already been in a home, chances are pretty good there's some house training, there's some manners that have been taught, and there might be a couple bad habits that you have to break too, but you start with a dog who already knows some things. And as much as I love puppies and as cute as they can be a lot of work.
I was going to say, yeah, the advantages of an older
Yes.
animal over, a darling little thing, because
Right.
all small anybody's are cute. I mean,
Exactly.
but they require an enormous amount of energy
Right.
and effort. So definitely consider older animals when
Yes.
adopting, because
Yeah.
they're not. So along those lines of keeping animals out of shelters, there's a lot of technology has really helped. A lot of programs, like you said, you're incorporating into the LA shelters. What are some of the things that you have found really work in regards to keeping animals out of shelters in the first place?
Neighbors helping neighbors.
Oh.
If an animal is out and if the animal is sick or injured or running in traffic or jumping on kids in a schoolyard, those dogs need to come to the shelter right away, no doubt about it. But if a dog is out or a cat in a safe neighborhood and it's just sort of wandering around, maybe got out the gate or out the back door, if neighbors put it on one of those neighborhood watches or put it on a lost and found Facebook page, they're probably going to get home a lot faster, putting up signs. And so neighbors helping neighbors is really, we've found that's the fastest way. And it's not just we here in LA. This is something that's being talked about on the national scale about what people are finding out and what we have learned during COVID. So they get home much faster. If you pick up a dog and you think, because you think it's lost, and it is if you don't see a person attached to it, and you drive it across town to a shelter, chances are the owner's going to look that neighborhood, search the neighborhood, put signs up in the neighborhood. It's going to take them a few days to think about where the dog might be and to start checking the shelters. And sometimes people wait so long to check the shelters that they've passed the stray hole period and the dog has already been adopted out.
Right.
So when people help people, neighbors help neighbors, I think that's really the best.
And what are you doing to help people get over whatever they may feel is the need to surrender an animal? Sometimes it's impossible. Sometimes
Right.
it has to happen. Someone's passed away, etc.
Right, absolutely.
But what are some of the programs that the shelter has to maybe help someone get over whatever challenges they're feeling with their?
Well, I think one of the things that we're doing really well right now is we're having educational Zoom meetings. We have rabbit roundtable,
What?
cat chat, doggy dialogue, and our wildlife seminars that go on a regular basis. So we have staff and volunteer experts who are on these Zoom meetings, and people can call up for problem solving or to ask questions or to...
Why does my bunny chew through my electrical cord?
Exactly. Or, I got an email from one lady who said, I thought I was going to have to bring that dog back, but I went on that doggy dialogue and they answered my question and it really worked, and I'm keeping this dog for the rest of my life.
Aww.
So, so we do those kinds of things. We have an awful lot of information on our website for people to, to read and learn more. But I think it's just about talking to people and explaining it. And, animals are a very emotional thing for a lot of people.
Right.
So sometimes people are going to hear it and they're going to say, that can't be true. That can't be true. We've got to take that dog to the shelter. We're not going to convince everybody today. But over time, and the LA Animal Services is a Tier 1 shelter in American Pets Alive HOS program, and that's Human Animal Support Services. So our big deal now is to keep the families together. If you have a dog and you can't afford medical care, we're working on a program to be able to help with that. It's not launched yet, but it's coming soon. We're also working on a program that's closer to being launched, that if one of our New Hope partners wants to pull an animal with a medical situation, we'll give them a copay. So to help them, defray the cost of the medical challenges with that pet. So we really want to keep pets together. I think the other exciting thing that's not quite here yet is a facial recognition program that Petco is developing, and apparently not only is it good facial recognition for dogs, but it works for cats too, which is really unique. So we're we're in line for being involved with that, so that to help people find their pets, or if somebody takes a picture and puts it up and says, does anybody know who this animal is, through this facial recognition program, we may very well just get that one home.
So you can map your animal's face. I mean,
Yes,
you'll
yes.
microchip them and then map their face.
Right, exactly. So that's a lot. I think sheltering is moving, and as it should, to be more of a help both ends of the leash. You've got a pet on one end, and you've got a human being who cares an awful lot on the other end. So we want to keep them together, and we want to help them solve problems, and we just want them to be happy together.
Well, all of this is fascinating, but on a very practical note, how are we doing? Because you had to close.
We did.
Couldn't have the human interaction.
Right.
Couldn't take the chances, etc. But we're sort of moving forward now.
Right.
Is everything open? Is everything
Yeah.
doing well?
We have all 6 shelters open now. We had closed temporarily West Valley and North Central, so they're all open now. We still have space in them. We didn't really have to open for space yet, but it was time, really. The staff had been working on 3 12-hour shifts so we could always have a group safe at home in quarantine in case we had an outbreak at one shelter. We were very lucky here in LA that didn't happen, but some of my colleagues across the country suddenly had an outbreak of COVID in their shelter, and then they didn't have people to take care of the animals.
Oh, no.
So it was quite an emergency for them. So we were very lucky not to have that experience. And so, I think we're ready to go. The staff is back on 8-hour shifts. They're excited. They like it. I think they liked the 12 hours for a while, but it became wearing, on them. And so I think they're all happy, and, we're back in business. Now, there are some changes in the business. Like most things in the city, we're reducing our counter services where people can come right in and be waited on and get their needs met, because we have to limit how many people can be in the building at one time.
Sure.
Similarly, our Director of Volunteer Services has had to design 6 different plans for volunteers because all the shelters are different sizes. So she can figure out the social distancing for how many volunteers can be in what part of the shelter with the number of staff that are also in there. So, it's been quite sort of a little mathematical puzzle at some levels, but we're bringing the volunteers back. They're helping with enrichment programs and with taking pictures, and they help with the pet food pantry, which is another one of our services to help people.
Is that going to
and
continue?
Pets. Yes, we actually doubled it. We were doing it twice a month. Now we're doing it weekly, and I think that needs to go on for a very long time. People need help, and we should help them.
Does it extend beyond food, by the way? Is there kitty litter and leashes and that kind of things too?
There is, and sometimes it varies. I mean, sometimes we get donations and people will say, how about, would you like all these toys to give out with the food? And of course we'll say yes, or leashes or beds or whatever. So we don't always, I wouldn't say our inventory is stable, but whatever we have, we will give to people to help them with their pets. And I think that's just so important. And so that's, and it's kind of fun. I mean, the volunteers who have been helping with that love it. And people are grateful for help. It's wonderful.
It's a big community, and along those lines is also caring for the potential of bad things happening. And I know that this is we should be aware of pet poisonings in this time. So there are things, especially now with our animals outside and us spending so much time, foods and plants that you should be very conscientious and cautious about when it comes to your dog.
Yeah, some plants are worse than others. Most of the really plants that are troublesome are around the holidays. The pets don't tend to go to the outdoor plants quite as much, but like mistletoe, for example, is really toxic. But who would think? And who doesn't want mistletoe hanging in their house? So, but if it drops,
if you don't want to kiss, I guess.
Yeah, I guess not. But if it drops off and the animals get it, it's toxic. But if you are concerned that your animal has eaten something that might be toxic, if they're heaving, if they're just lethargic, you don't want to wait on that. You need to call your vet. And if you can't reach your vet, the ASPCA has a poison hotline. You can call them up. You can say, I think my dog ate, I don't know,
chocolate.
Whatever. Yeah, chocolate. And they'll say, well, how much? How much does your dog weigh? And yes, it's toxic. And they will be able to tell you whether or not you need to go to an emergency clinic right then. And I think that's so important for people to know that. If your own vet is open, you don't need to make that call. Just call your vet. But if you go to a clinic that's not open 24/7, those things always happen at night.
They happen at Sunday at 9 p.m. at night. That's exactly when they happen.
And don't let the dogs drink your martini. That's not a good thing either. Chocolate, martini, all those kind of things. And and some dogs just overeat. You know, if it's people who like a lot of turkey and dressing, for example, at Thanksgiving, you can put your dog into some kind of pancreatic attack just by letting them overeat. So, and might not be poison per se, but it'll make them really sick, and it could be fatal. So, you know, those are all things to watch. Just be careful with them. You know, if you weigh 100 pounds, I'm going to cut this down a little bit. I'm leaving off my COVID weight. And your dog,
square that for me.
And your dog weighs 10 pounds. Think in proportions. You would eat a slice of pie, and for your dog, that would be a fork of pie. So that's, I think, what people probably don't think about. Oh, he loves it. He loves it. Yeah, now he's very sick.
Right, right. And maybe we shouldn't be giving them artificial food anyway. It is the time of year in which, you know, spring is sprung and life is generating, and there are a lot of wild animals that we have in, you know, our area, and sometimes we've squoze them out of their own space, so they're kind of in our space. So what should people do about raccoons and skunks and coyotes and all of those things out there?
Learn to love them and learn to coexist with them. You know, I live in a pretty coyote territory. I live out in the county, in the country, and people aren't very close, houses aren't close, and we have coyotes all around. I have little dogs, and the cats are always indoors. The little dogs, I always go out with them, or I can send a big dog out with them. But you have to just be careful and know that they're there. And for the most part, they're kind of skittish animals. You can scare them away. We have lots of good material on the website about that. Raccoons are interesting. I think the big threat with raccoons and skunks really is sometimes they do get distemper, and they do carry distemper. So it's important to make sure you have your regular vaccines. Just talk to your veterinarian about what you should be vaccinating for every year and what the protocol should be. One of the things that I learned when I had a house in the city was that skunks really don't like the water hose. So if you just sort of I'm not saying blast them with the water hose, but if you just let them feel a little bit of water on their back end, they will skittle away.
And they won't spray?
And they don't stop to spray.
Okay.
They're running away. So, you know, it's very interesting. And so that way you can if you learn these little things, you can kind of enjoy them all.
So even though, now let's go back into the shelter environment. So with animal services, even though we're still kind of in these very, you know, baby steps to get back into normal, are you looking for volunteers? Are you looking for anything? Is there anything that would really help this whole community at this moment in time?
Well, we're not actually we're not just throwing the doors open so everyone can come in because of social distancing, and we're bringing back first our volunteers that have been waiting for a year to come back into the shelters. So they'll be the ones coming in first, but we will always want to train new volunteers, involve new people in the process. We certainly are looking for foster parents. I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, we're about to come into kitten season, and it's already started. And we have major partners, other rescues, who take as many kittens as they can that come into our shelters. But, you know, how about fostering? You know, if you want your children to experience birth, well, rather than breeding, because we don't need any more animals, foster a litter. Foster a litter of kittens. It is so much fun, and the whole family can be involved. And you can pick how hard you want to work. If you want little tiny babies that their eyes aren't open, you're going to have to bottle feed them every couple hours around the clock. If you want to not put quite that much effort in, then
and just want to play with kittens for a while.
Get one that's 3 or 4 weeks old. They've started to eat on their own. They're way cute, and they just sort of, you know, stump around a little bit, and you know, they're fun. So it's a great family project. We don't have as many, puppies, litters of puppies in the shelters as we used to, but occasionally we even have a litter of puppies that someone could foster. And, it's a good way for children to get used to animals and to just start to handle them when they're really little. And it's not always easy. I mean, at that age, they have those little tiny sharp teeth. They're not really biting, but they're chewing, So, it teaches children to say, well, wait a minute, don't bite me like that. I don't like that. And then they set a boundary with each other.
How long is the average fostering when you are dealing with, not an adult animal, but a tiny little cluster of creatures?
Well, and we vary it according to what people's needs are, but ideally you would take a youngster and keep it until it was about 8 weeks old, or at least 2 pounds, and then they're old enough to be altered, because we don't release animals from the shelter unless there's a medical reason to do it, unless they've already been spayed and neutered and microchipped and fully vaccinated.
So what are the things that someone should ask themselves before they think, oh, it'll be really fun to have this new life in my house? Parrots live for 70 plus years, and what about those animals? What should one ask oneself before one walks into the...
The same thing I asked my daughter was if I got a parrot, and I didn't, if I could leave it to her. Oh. And, because they do live a long time. So if I got a parrot now, chances would be very slim that I would outlive it. So I would have to have someone on standby who would be willing to adopt that parrot and take it. And the same thing is true. I mean, I even think that about my horse. I mean, she's only 8 years old, and she might live to be 30 years. So I have to have a plan in place for what would happen to her when something happens to me.
Sure.
So I think that's true for all of them. One of the dogs that we adopted, she was actually a shelter dog, but she ended up with a rescue, and we adopted her from the rescue. They had my partner's daughter come and co-sign for us because we were so darn old. And I thought, and Pam was like, what? And I'm like,
it's okay.
Do you want the dog?
It's okay.
Yeah.
Things to
but I really respected the rescue for doing that.
Yes. Well, if people want more information about all of these subjects that we've talked about today, what's the best way to find out?
Go online to our website. And it's got so much information on it. It's a little bit hard to find everything you want, but I think there is a search thing, and we're working on a new updated website that will be a little bit easier, I think, to find materials on.
Sure.
And that's one good way. I think, this American Pets Alive and this HOS thing that we're part of, people can sit in on those Zoom meetings. I mean, if you want information about what's going on across the country and in Canada, information from 600 different shelters, go to some of those American Pets Alive webinars. They're great. The other place that has great webinars is UC Davis, the Shelter Medicine Program. So there's a multitude of ways to get information, and we do have a resource manual on our Facebook, on our website, and that's been distributed to the council offices.
All right. Be fun to be part of Cat Chat. All right. Thanks so much. Great to talk to you, Brenda.
Thanks. Nice to see you again.